Wednesday morning, July the 13th, 2022, and it's a pleasure to be able to share some truths with you from the Word of God today. I'm Pastor Mike Custer, the pastor of Bible Baptist Church in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and we're going to read this morning Proverbs chapter 26, verses 2 and 3. Proverbs chapter 26, verse 2 and 3 say this: As the bird by wandering, as the swallow by flying, so the curse, causeless, shall not come. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Now, verse 2 speaks of the curse, causeless. In other words, if something bad happens to someone, it's not without purpose. There's always something behind it. And the Bible uses the illustration of a bird by wandering, a swallow by flying. These have a purpose in the direction that they're going. And then the Bible in the next verse talks about a whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. And these relate to this curse, causeless. It's not true that there's no point to these things. There is something behind what happens, and especially in God's economy, God doesn't do things for no reason. And so we should not imagine, oh, that just was a coincidence. There aren't any coincidences in God's economy. Things happen for a reason. There's always a purpose for it. And this is especially true in the lives of God's people. And the Bible talks about the bird that's wandering and the swallow that's flying, and the curse, causeless, will not come. There'll be something that is behind it. There'll be something that initiates that action if it's taken. And the bird is looking for food or for shelter or something like that. And it will be following its instincts. And what will happen when the rod is laid to the fool's back, or when the whip is laid to the horse, or the bridle is put on the ass, there's an intent, there's a purpose behind it. And it's such a blessing that we can trust God's purposes, and whatever He determines, there's a good reason for it. Whatever God allows to happen in the lives of His people, there's a point to that. And the curse never comes causeless, if you want to speak of it as a curse. Whenever God deals with people, He may deal with them harshly, He may deal with them, it seems to be unmercifully. There's always a reason, and God is a merciful God, and He always brings things into our life that will be for our benefit, not for ultimately our harm or our hurt. And so we can take a lot of comfort and a lot of consolation in the fact that things don't just happen. It's not just a coincidence. This thing occurred for a very, very good reason. And it's important for the child of God especially to trust God, just to believe God that the Lord is allowing this to happen for a very good purpose. And we may not understand that purpose initially. In fact, it may be at the end of our lifetime before we actually see why this happened. It may be many years later before we would actually grasp the meaning behind it all. But God has a great purpose, and He always is aware of how best to accomplish His purposes. Though it may not seem to us that way at the moment. How did God bring Joseph to honor in Pharaoh's house? How did God bring Job to humility and then bless him twice as much as he had before? How did God accomplish all those things? How did God bring Abraham? How did God bring Moses to the place where he would be a faithful servant of the Lord and have himself under control? How did this happen? Well, God has His ways of accomplishing His purposes, and we may not always understand what they are, but the curse causeless never comes. There's always a reason behind it. There's always a good divine appointment, a good divine purpose for what occurs. And so it remains to us just to trust Him, just to keep our eyes on the Lord and accept the things that He does that obviously are the Lord's hand, and let Him accomplish His purposes. God bless you as you deal with the issues of your life, and may you trust the Lord and realize that He knows what he's doing, and all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. God bless you today.